Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Buhari and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome everyone to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Buhari.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thank you all for tuning in. If you're like me, you're still basking in the glow of last weekend's action on Showtime. Jermell Charlo becoming the undisputed 154-pound king. We'll get to that in a bit. In today's toe-to-toe section, Mike and I are going to list our 5 greatest super middleweights of all time. But first, let's kick things off with the PBC Fight of the Week. This Saturday from the Gila River Arena in Glendale, Arizona, undefeated, 2-time 168-pound world champion and Phoenix native David Benavidez takes on former world champion David Lemieux in a 12-round battle for the interim WBC World Super Middleweight title. The PBC on Showtime televised action begins at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we begin here with the essentials.
Okay, here we go. Benavidez 25-0, 22 knockouts. Lemieux 43-4, 36 knockouts. A lot of knockouts between these guys. Both guys are 5-0 in their last 5. Benavidez 5 KOs. Lemieux with 3 KOs. Last fight for Benavidez, Kyron Davis, November. He stopped him in 7. Lemieux stopped David Zagara in June. He stopped him in 2 rounds. Benavidez has an 88% knockout percentage, which is one of the highest in boxing. Lemieux at 77, that's also high. Benavidez 115 rounds, professional rounds. Lemieux 197. Benavidez 25. Lemieux 33. Benavidez turned pro in 2013. He's already been around. He's already starting his in his last year of his first decade as a pro, wow, which is crazy. Lemieux turned pro in 2007. They both fight from an orthodox stance. Benavidez will have an edge in height and reach. Benavidez is 6 feet and 1/2 inch. Lemieux 5'9.5", 74.5-inch reach for Benavidez. He's big, strong, and long. And Lemieux's 70-inch reach. David Benavidez lives in Seattle, but he's from Phoenix, which is near the site of the fight. Lemieux is from Montreal.
Nice, very, very nice. I mean, you look at those stats for David Benavidez and you understand why so many consider him the man to dethrone Canelo Alvarez, although Canelo was kind of dethroned a few weeks ago. What are your thoughts on Benavidez?
You know, I love Benavidez as a fighter. I like him as a person too, but I love him as a fighter. I think the first thing you think about is that he's a big, strong, relentless, power-punching fighter. But he's also a good, patient boxer who's methodical in his attack. He's not a slugger, in other words. He just doesn't go in there and bang. There's a method to his madness. He's in other words, he's just a really good boxer who happens to be aggressive and punches hard. What I'm trying to say. That combination, I think, is what makes him so formidable. And he's only 25 years old. He's probably still getting better, which is not a positive thought for, his potential rivals. I think Benavidez is a special fighter whose best is yet to come. Yeah,
it's almost scary considering how young he is. What about Lemieux? What are your thoughts on him, and what has he been up to lately?
Well, I've always really enjoyed watching Lemieux fight. That's why I know this fight, like, maybe on paper isn't the greatest matchup, but Lemieux has always been one of my favorites to watch because of his aggression, because of his power, and Benavidez is similar in some ways. So I know the fight's going to be fun. So that's how I feel about Lemieux. He's a solid boxer, but he has a seek and destroy mentality and the power to go with it. And although he's come up short in his biggest fights, that includes a bad KO against Triple G and a decision against Billy Joe Saunders most recently. But he also has wins over Gabriel Rosado, Hassan N'Dam, and a few other good fighters. And I think he's won his last 5 fights. Well, I just said he's won his last 5. I'm just trying to think if it's gone any more than that. I think it's just 5. I think he's won his last 5 since he was outpointed by Saunders. So he's on a little bit of a roll. I'm not sure Lemieux is a top-tier fighter, but he's good, and he has a chance to win any fight because of his punching power.
Is it just because of his punching power? I mean, how can he win this fight? Would it take a home run bomb?
Yeah. I don't see him outboxing Benavidez. I think he's just too good of a boxer. I think he just needs to find a way to land a big punch and hurt Benavidez. Again, it's just possible. That doesn't mean I think he should just swing away wildly looking for a knockout, which would probably lead to him walking into a punch and getting knocked out. I think he needs to box a little, be patient, and then pounce, when the opportunities come up. And that's how he fights. He's not like a wild puncher. He's got some boxing skills. I just don't think he can outbox Benavidez, and I think he's going to have to knock him out. But he can. He's got the power.
Is he going to knock him out is the question. What's your prediction?
No, I don't think he's going to knock him out. Benavidez is too good and too savvy for Lemieux. I even talked about Lemieux's power. He goes, oh, yeah, Lemieux's got crazy power. I really have to be careful about that. And he's really prepared for that. So, it's not as if he doesn't know that the guy can really punch. He's not going to be reckless, which could cost him against a guy like Lemieux. Again, he methodically breaks you down and almost always stops you. I think that's what's going to happen. I'll say Benavidez by KO 8.
Yeah, I like Benavidez by TKO 10th round. I think, he'll do what he usually does, sort of pick up steam as the rounds go on. And when, Benavidez starts to pick up steam pretty soon, he's going to steamroll you. So I think Benavidez keeps his KO streak going in this one. Now, in the co-feature, you've got the hard-hitting, up-and-coming Cuban prospect, Yoelvis Gomez, taking a big step up in class against Mexico's Jorge Cota, the veteran, in a 10-round super welterweight bout. Mike, a lot of people believe this fight could steal the show. What do you think?
Well, first, I'm really intrigued by Gomez, especially after going on to YouTube and watching some of his fights. Really intriguing. I don't know. I guess you call him a contender already, even though he's only had 5 fights. I think it would be hard to steal the show because Benavidez and Lemieux are both aggressive, big punchers. That almost certainly is going to be a really entertaining fight for as long as it lasts. But this fight, Gomez versus Cotto, is similar to the main event. These guys are at different stages of their careers, but they're both good boxers who could whack. 27 of Cotto's 30 victories have come by knockout, and Gomez has stopped all 5 of his opponents. So don't look away in that fight.
Oh, only 5 opponents going up against Jorge Cota. Is this too big a step up for Gomez?
I don't think it is. Gomez was reared in the Cuban amateur system, which is always a good foundation. And, honestly, I didn't know this before I did some research, but he has strong bloodlines. His father, Jose Gomez, won a world amateur title in 1978, wow, and then a gold medal in the 1980 Moscow Olympics, which much of the Western world boycotted. But still, that's something. I think he's considered one of the better boxers in the history of the Cuban amateur system. So Yelvis has been around boxing his whole life, and he certainly passes the eye test. He's a super slick boxer. You can see the amateur pedigree. He has a lot of power, as I said. He also has like a serious killer instinct. When this guy has you hurt, man, this guy just goes nuts. So this is definitely a guy to watch, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I think so too, and I assume you're picking him to win.
Yep. I think Cotto will come to fight hard. That's who he is. And who knows? We might see Gomez's chin tested in this fight. Again, Cotto could punch, and he's got experience, got that edge over Gomez, at least on the professional level. I just think in terms of ability that Gomez is a level above Cotto. I think he'll outbox him. He'll eventually hurt him at some point, and then I think he's going to finish the job. So I'm going to say Gomez KO 7.
Yeah, me too. I like Gomez by late TKO. I think he's got too much firepower. And Cotto, he's been in so many wars, and he loves the war, that I think that may be his undoing here. Now, the TV opener features a battle of 2 unbeaten featherweight prospects, Dominican Republic's Luis Nunez against Mexico's Javier Fierro, in what could be a scintillating battle. What can you tell us about these 2 fighters?
Nunez is a good boxer puncher from the Dominican Republic. He reportedly was 85-5 as an amateur, which is a pretty good foundation. 16-0 with 12 knockouts as a pro. So he's got a little bit of a pedigree. He's got some power, obviously, and he made a nice impression on Showbox in his last fight, outboxing and then stopping previously unbeaten Carlos Arrieta in the 10th and final round. Interesting note, Nunez fought at 118 pounds 5 fights ago, so he's climbed the divisions pretty quickly. He's ranked number 12 by the WBA, but at 122, and this fight's at 126. So it's just something to maybe think about going in that fight. Now, Fierro is a fascinating prospect. I guess he's ranked. I guess you can call him a contender. The Mexican is only 18 years old, but he's already ranked number 15 by the WBA at 126. The kid can punch. He's 13-0 with 12 knockouts, but he's also a pretty capable boxer based on what I've seen. This is a terrific matchup of talented young guys.
Based on what you know, what kind of fight can we expect?
kind of hard for me to say because I don't know. I don't have a real good feel for these guys, but I think we might see sort of a chess match early in the fight because, again, they can both box. But I think once they get comfortable, I think the leather is going to fly. Neither of these guys is shy. They both, I think, are kind of aggressive by nature. Nunez, who's 22, probably has an edge in maturity, but Fierro might have a natural size advantage based on what I was telling you before. It'll be really interesting to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, sounds like a good fight to sort of kick things off on Saturday night. Now, it is time to bring in our guest this week. He is an unbeaten super middleweight contender who at 6-0 and still only 24 is considered one of the rising stars in the game, David Morrell Jr. David, how has camp been for your upcoming fight against Kalvin Henderson?
First, good afternoon. My training camp is so very good. Everything good, way good, training good. I'm excited for the fight, the Kevin. Like todo súper bien, todo ha estado bien, con everything good on Ronnie, Jack, like my team. I'm ready for the fight, man.
What can you tell us about Henderson? What do you know about him?
No, really like no watch a lot of fights with Henderson. But he's good boxing. He's good personality. Pero no he visto así como que mucho de él, la verdad. No tengo una gran noción de lo que es su boxeo, pero sí sé que es un buen boxeador, ya muchas personas me lo han dicho, pero anyway vamos a salir con todo para esa pelea, como siempre.
Like I was saying, I haven't really studied him in depth, but I've been told he's a really good fighter. Regardless of what he does, I know I'm going to be ready for him on June 4th.
David, I want to express my respect for you. Your English is getting better and better. Is that something that's important to you?
Thanks, bro.
Okay. Are you the type of fighter, some guys do, some guys don't. Are you the type of fighter who studies tapes of your opponent, or do you leave that up to your trainer to do that?
No, yo que mi equipo se ocupe de todo eso. Yo solamente trabajo. Obvio que siempre veo su última pelea, ¿no? Veo siempre su última pelea o cualquier video que saque en YouTube, pero no soy de estudiar siempre a mis oponentes. Solamente soy de las personas que no me gusta estudiar mucho a los oponentes porque voy con varios planes de trabajo, ¿me entiendes? Y si no funciona uno, funciona otro, si no otro, pero no, porque al final no siempre todos van bien, no todas las peleas son iguales.
Well, I do watch my opponent's last fight, that's for sure, but I don't like to overthink things or study him too much, far back in his fights, because each fight is different. So he may come out against someone one way and against another opponent another way, and it would just get in the way of the way I want to work. So having said that, I study him like as much as I need to, but not too much to where it gets cluttered.
Makes sense. So this is your second fight with trainer Ronnie Shields. What has the chemistry been like between the two of you?
Esta va a ser tu segunda pelea bajo la tutela de Ronnie Shields. ¿Qué tal ha sido la química entre ustedes?
No, it's perfect. It's perfect for me and Ronnie. Like the first time the training camp on Ronnie, like it's a little time for three weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. No got a time, no got nothing. It's every time. So the last camp right now, like 10 weeks. So it's a lot of time. It's perfect, Ronnie and me and Ronnie, like the combination for the team, for like energy and the gym, like everything is perfect for me.
The English was great, and the Spanish part was that he was saying that he worked with his technique.
That's awesome. What specific area has Ronnie helped you to improve the most?
Me ha ayudado mucho en lo que son los oponentes que ¿sabes? Los sparring, los oponentes que he tenido. y más en lo que es la parte de la técnica, o sea, en la parte de técnica no, en la parte de la defensa, que he mejorado mucho en lo que es la defensa, también en entender más los boxeadores, y lo principal que lo que más me gusta de Ronnie es que me deja fluir como yo soy en el ring, so, me deja hacer mi boxeo, no me cambia nada, solo me aporta lo que...
So he has done mostly three things really well for me that I truly appreciate. The first is that he has upped the level of my sparring partners. He has given me absolutely spectacular sparring partners, and I'm really happy about that. Second, the defense. He has helped me not only polish my technique, but to be better defensively. And then something that I really truly love about him is the fact that he lets me flow within my own style of fighting. He doesn't try to get into my head too much, to where he allows me to be me, and I absolutely relish that.
Now, you mentioned the sparring. Ronnie also trains WBC middleweight champion Jermell Charlo. Have you had the chance to meet Jermell yet?
Yeah. Today, I watched the sparring de Jermell. Es la tercera vez que coincidimos en el gym.
So we actually coincided in the gym for the third time today. I congratulated him for his brother's win the other day on Saturday against Castano, and I actually I spar against his sparrings as well, so we kind of share that too.
But you guys haven't sparred together yet, right?
No, that's just logistically impossible because we train at different times.
Got it. Okay. You recently called out David Benavidez, who's fighting this Saturday night. Most people might say, or some people might say, well, you only have 5 or 6 fights. You should wait to fight a guy like Benavidez. Why do you feel you're ready to take him on now?
Like, hey, listen, everybody, I'm ready. Like I got into professional boxing like 6 fights right there. I got in amateur like 135 fighting. My body, my mentality, me, I'm feel ready like for the fight of Benavidez. I respect Benavidez. I respect the fight of Benavidez. I respect the team of Benavidez. But my mentality, my team, and me, support me. Like I feel good. So the fight of Benavidez, everybody like. Text me or talking me, hey bro, cut down. Like you're not ready for Benavidez. Why? Because right now it's really like not got a lot of fighting in professional boxing. Okay, but like in amateur a lot of fighters. So it's more the 100 fighters. I'm ready.
Okay. What advantages do you think you'd have over David in the ring?
Like he's a good fight, man. Like Benavidez, I think so. He's perfect boxing, Like got the power, got the move, got everything. Benavidez, same me, but yo pienso que todo debe como que surgir sobre el ring. Solamente pienso que tengo más movilidad y que tengo esa escuela cubana. Tenemos la misma característica, pero tengo esa escuela cubana, lo que es los movimientos. Me atrevo a decir que tengo un poco más de defensa. Creo que es la única ventaja así que tengo sobre David Benavidez.
We will have to see inside the ring, but I think that if I have a specific advantage, it will be the fact that I am more spry. I have more mobility than he does. My defense is more polished, and I come from the Cuban style of boxing. So if I had to say what would make me stand out, that would make me stand out over him.
I like it. There are obviously Canelo Alvarez is the undisputed champ at 168, but he recently lost a unanimous decision to 175-pound champ Dimitri Bivol. Did you watch that fight? What did you think of it?
Yeah, of course. Like, hey, it's crazy because before 1 week before the debut Canelo, I told you like Luis de Cuba Jr. I told you like a lot of people in my social media, like, hey, for me, I know that Canelo is a nice pound for pound. He's the face the boxing, you know, but like Canelo no he's saying he no fighting like really the boxing, you know, like the one boxing like got everything, you know, got the move, got the power, the main down. So Canelo es con su oponente, ¿sabes? Nunca he tenido la oportunidad así de pelear con un boxeador que no le tenga miedo, para decirlo con más con más claridad. Incluso pueden ver la pelea con Volosky, like, ha sido la única pelea que Canelo ha retrocedido. So, es lo que pasó ahora con Bivol. Bivol no se desesperó, supo mantener la distancia, supo, ¿sabes?, trabajar lo que fue los golpes rectos, que aprovechar el tamaño, y por eso yo digo que tuvo la pelea. Por eso fue que yo siempre decía que estaba ready para pelear con Canelo, porque son las mismas cualidades que yo tengo, ¿me entiendes? Incluso pueden ver hasta la pelea que tuvo con Lara. De todos modos, no digo que no esté ready para pelear con Canelo, porque yo sí estoy ready para pelear con cualquiera de las 168 libras. Simplemente que él no me ha prestado atención ahora porque no va a tener ningún objetivo conmigo. Pero de que estoy ready.
So, to be perfectly clear, what Canelo is not used to doing is fighting against fighters that are not scared of him. That's what happened with Bivol, and the closest comparison to that will be the Golovkin fight. So Bivol was able to use his size and you know, coming after Canelo with patience, the way he did, and that's how he prevailed. And I think that I share those kind of same traits with Bivol: the lack of fear, the patience, the ability to spot my opportunities. So I'm not saying that I'm ready for Canelo right now. What I am saying is that if I were to have to fight against Canelo, I would share the same traits that Bivol showcased on Saturday night. But what I'm saying is that Canelo wouldn't pay any mind to me right now because he's not paying attention to the 158-pound division anyway.
Gotcha. So do you think that he should rematch Bivol, or should he go back down to 168?
No, man, like the 168 de home de Canelo. You know what I'm saying? Like, ¿para qué va a subir a 175? No, yo me quedaría en la 168. Ahí donde él lo ha ganado todo, donde se siente mejor. Y sería, ¿sabes? Sería diferente para Bivol, porque quien tendría que desgastarse un poco más sería Bivol, no Canelo.
I think Canelo's home is at 168. I don't know why the hell he's trying to go up to 175 and what he's trying to prove there. I do think that if Bivol came down to 168, it will be more more tiring for Bivol in a way, cutting down the weight and everything. But I think Canelo should be at 168 where he belongs.
There are, speaking of 168, there are a lot of great fights in that division. We'd like to get your opinion on some of them. Caleb Plant versus Benavidez. Who do you think would win that fight?
I think I think so. Benavidez. So listen, Plant is good boxing, like distance, you know. So he's fast, he's good movies. Pero no got the power. No, Benavidez es como que más calmado, so more down, got the power, he got the defense. So I don't know, like en esa pelea, ¿sabes? It's boxing, it's your pride, you know. Pero I think so. Benavidez, like the winner versus Caleb Plant.
Okay, one more. Jermell Charlo versus Benavidez.
It's
more difficult.
Damn, go fight, man. I don't know, bro. Anyway, Benavidez, like, I think so. Benavidez is big. You know what I'm saying? Like, si es inteligente, utiliza la distancia y mantiene a Charlo a la distancia, creo que le gana, porque porque Charlo tiene pegada, tiene buena defensa y es excelente boxeador. Pero Benavidez tiene todo, ¿sabes? Tiene esa misma cualidad, pero es un poco más, es muy más grande. So, si lo mantiene a la distancia, yo pienso que gane Benavidez, pienso yo.
Charlo certainly has the power, and he has what it takes to prevail. But I do think that Benavidez will win if he's smart and keeps his distance. So to where it will be a great fight, but it will be a tactical kind of thing where whoever can keep their nerves in check and be smarter with a cool head, that will be the key. But I think, like I said, that if Benavidez can keep his distance and strike at the right times, he could certainly win that fight.
De todos modos hay que ver, porque mira la última pelea que sabes que tuvo Charlie, fue súper excelente. So hay que ver el boxeo de sorpresa, y pueden pasar muchas cosas. Incluso mira la pelea de Pacquiao con Márquez, ¿sabes? Pacquiao iba ganando y Márquez lo naqueó así de la nada. Eso hay que ver lo que pasa arriba, pero por cualidad, por estadísticas, para mí gana Benavidez.
Boxing is, but look, boxing can be full of surprises, totally unpredictable. Just go back to where Pacquiao fought Marquez, and Pacquiao was controlling that fight, winning it, and then all of a sudden, boom, Marquez knocked him out of nowhere. So you never know what could happen inside the ring with two quality fighters like that. But like I said, if Benavidez can keep his wits about him and have the right strategy, I believe that he will win that fight.
Now, you're a big, strong 168-pounder. You started your career fighting at around 170 pounds. Is the light heavyweight division in your near future too?
Yeah. Of course. Like maybe in 4 or 5 years, I want to go 175. But right now, like I'm feel good at 168. My body, like everything good. Like the weight is good. So no problem for right now for 168. Like in the future, I'm coming like 175. Of course, like 100%. But right now, I'm good in 168.
Okay, so getting back to your immediate plans, then, do you plan on fighting again this year?
Sí, yeah, in December. Thanks so, like. Primero Dios, like, que todo salga bien esta pelea, todo bien. La siguiente pelea sería en diciembre, y ya para el año que viene ya estaríamos mirando ya boxeadores de otro nivel. So sería Benavidez, que el plan, que el Trual, Andy Vigo, bueno, yeah, like right now I'm focused on my next fight in June 4th. After about next year, like I'm focused like in Benavidez, que el plan, maybe Canelo. So everything, like every day I tell you, like everything interview, I'm ready for everything people want CTA. I want to fight everything people want CTA, but first time, like I want to fight Benavidez.
David, we can't wait to see how this unfolds. Thanks so much for joining us again. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much, man. Thank you for calling me. Like, David Morrell Jr., June 4, Showtime. Let's go. Thank you for everything.
Last Saturday at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California, fight fans witnessed a coronation. Jermell Ironman Charlo became the first ever undisputed super welterweight champion in the 4-belt era with a thrilling 10th round TKO over Brian Castano in their rematch on PBC on Showtime. Before we get into Jermell's big win, let's talk about the fight itself. Mike, what were your thoughts?
I thought it was a terrific fight. It had the feel of a fight of the year candidate, at least for much of the fight, to me anyway. The level of skill was really high. They went back and forth the whole fight. Each guy having their strong moments. It was a hard-fought, competitive fight, and we got a dramatic ending. So all in all, I think it lived up to the hype and maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was a great fight as well. Good back and forth. Obviously I was there in person. It looked closer live than on TV. But I thought around the 7th round or so, Jermell began pulling away. Basically during the second half of the fight, he boxed really, really well. Folks forget he could do that. And then, he put Castano away. What was the difference this time for Charlo compared to their first encounter?
I think Charlo was more assertive in this fight. I don't want to say he was passive in the first fight, but I think he was more assertive in this one. And remember, he had to win the last 3 rounds on all the cards to earn a draw the last time. So he eked out a draw, if you will. This time he was busier. He was more precise with his punches. He landed his power shots at a considerably higher level than he did in the first fight. And he didn't let, and this is really important, he didn't let Castano trap him against the ropes or trap him at all, really. I mean, he did at times, at moments, but he used his feet to sort of dictate where the fight was fought, and it generally wasn't the best location for Castano. And finally, he landed the big shot at just the right location on Castano's body. Castano was asked, after the fight, what was the difference between the 2 fights? He said that he got me.
Yeah. I think that sounds about right. I mean, Jermell I thought he was in dog shape for this fight. He made adjustments. He made Castano's aggression work against Castano. And also credit goes to Derek James, who I think had a, terrific game plan, and Jermell stuck to it. He just seemed to be operating at a totally higher level than last summer. What was your scorecard at the time of the stoppage?
I was interested that you said that it seemed closer live, because I had an 86-85 for Charlo, 5 rounds to 4. I think that score or an 87-84 were about right. It had the feel of that to me, one of those 2 scores. I kept kind of in my head after, I was kind of thinking, should I have scored that 87-84? Anyway, it was right in there. I think the wider scores probably were too wide. Castano had some good success, particularly in the first half of the fight. You had mentioned that Charlo sort of picked up steam a little bit later on. But of course, it didn't matter. That was Charlo's goal. His stated goal to render the scorecards irrelevant, and they were in the end.
Yeah, they were. I didn't score. I just don't score fights, but unless I absolutely positively have to. But I thought that the first half of the fight was competitive. And then, as I said, I thought Jermell sort of pulled away. I thought Jermell controlled most of the action in the first half of the fight too, but certainly the 7th, 8th, and 9th rounds, I thought he was in complete command. With regard to Castano, let's talk about him first. Obviously, it's a significant loss for him, but a great, great effort. What should be next for him?
I think he remains a viable opponent for anyone, maybe except for Charlo. He'll have to get back in line and work his way back to another title shot, I suppose, but that might take just 1 win or 2. I don't know. Maybe Charlo decides to move up to 160. Castano could end up fighting for a vacant title. Who knows? Yeah. I can see that happening. No matter what, I imagine he'll take on a contender in his next fight to sort of begin the process of working toward another title shot. I don't think he's finished. I think he's still a major player, and I won't be surprised if he ends up with another belt wrapped around his waist.
Yeah, me neither. I think, he's proven over the course of his career to be an elite fighter. Still plenty of top guys at 154, and I'd love to see him in the mix with all of them. What about Jermell Charlo? First things first, where does he fall on your pound-for-pound list?
So he cracked my top 10, landing at 10, so that's a first. I thought about putting him higher than that. I think a lot about these things, but before I do them, I try. So I thought about putting him higher than that, and he probably will end up higher than that in the future. But I think maybe he needs to beat a top 7 or top 8 guy to climb into, say, the top 5. But it's step by step for him. First he got onto the list. Now he's at number 10, so he's going in the right direction. I'll say this: I don't hesitate to say that Jermell Charlo is one of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound, for sure. It's no question.
Yeah, no question. He's top 5 probably on my list. I've got Usyk, Crawford, and Inoue, Spence, and then I think Jermell Charlo falls right around there. I think he's somewhere in the 5 to 7 mark, but in the top 5 on my list. Is he a Hall of Famer?
I think he is. that victory actually might have clinched it for him. He's now beaten Erickson Lubin, Austin Trout, Tony Harrison in their rematch, Jason Rosario, and now Castano. That's a terrific run. He's undisputed. He's the dominant junior middleweight of the past several years now. That counts for a lot. I'm confident in saying this. If I'm going to be conservative, I'll say if he hasn't clinched his place in the Hall, he can't be more than one or two more big victories away. So at the very least, he's very close.
Yeah, I think that he is as well. I mean, he didn't become undisputed by beating one guy who had all four belts. I mean, he did it the hard way, and he did it in style. He stopped each champion. He fought along the way. He's been doing this for so long that he debuted on a Joe Calzaghe undercard. And, you look at the guys he beat before he became champion: Gabe Rosado, Vanes Martirosyan, Francisco Santana, Demetrius Hopkins, and these were all guys in their prime when he fought them. This was a prospect in Jermell Charlo. I mean, he paid his dues before he ever had a strap, and I don't need to get into the guys he beat. Once he got that belt, you listed them. It's pretty impressive. I mean, he's beaten who's who in two different generations of super welterweight. So yeah, I think he's absolutely a Hall of Famer. The question is, what does he do next?
I would like to see him fight one or two of the rising young 154-pounders before he moves up to 160. Guys like Tim Tszyu, Sebastian Fundora, and maybe one of the top 147-pounders if they end up moving up to 154. I think that a few more victories at that weight would lift him even higher on the all-time list of top 154-pounders and enhance his legacy. In other words, if he could beat, let's say he fights Tszyu and Fundora. I don't know if even that's possible. Let's say he fights and beats both those guys. Man, oh man, he already is one of the dominant 154-pounders, but that takes him to like a different level. Of course, there are also challenges at 160. He mentioned moving up to middleweight and, quote unquote, doing it again, I think is what he said. That sounds really interesting to me too. So, the world's his oyster. He's got a lot of options right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I'd like to see him get some good rest, take a good vacation. He's earned it. When he comes back, he's got, plenty of challenges. You mentioned Tszyu, Fundora. Hey, look, Tony Harrison looked good in this last fight, but I want to see Jermell in a big fight. I think Tszyu and Fundora qualify, but I like you. I'd like to see a 147-pounder move up and give him that big fight. Look, Danny Garcia has mentioned that he wants to come up to 54 and become a 3-division champion. I'm sure Mel would be, ready to welcome him, make that fight happen. Now, in the co-feature, undefeated top 147-pound contender Jaron Boots Ennis barely broke a sweat, stopping the previously unbeaten Custio Clayton in 2 rounds. What, if anything, can we take from this fight?
First, I think it reinforced what we already thought. Well, I already thought about Ennis, that he's a dominating all-around fighter, even against brutal guys. And a cool aspect of it is that brutal knockouts like that, which are just like he's delivering one after the other. Brutal knockouts like that are making him more and more of sort of like a legend, which is always exciting to see. Like the legend of Jaron Boots Ennis is being built before our eyes. One more observation. I think Clayton was reading Ennis's clips, newspaper clippings before the fight. Either that or he felt his power very early, because it looked like he fought scared to me. He covered up. He didn't throw many punches. It was as if he just wanted to not get hurt. The fact he wasn't able to get out of the second round with that posture, I think that says even more about Ennis.
Yeah, absolutely. Because usually that kind of fight turns into a stinker. Instead, Ennis got him out of there fairly quickly. What's the logical next step for Boots?
His time is coming fast, I think. He's ranked in the top 4 by all 4 major sanctioning bodies, and he's building an impressive reputation, which means the top guys can't avoid him much longer. I mean, pretty soon you can't use the excuse, well, nobody knows who he is. He's young. He's still building his reputation. His reputation is getting there, and he's ranked at the top of all the things. So it's going to happen soon. I think Spence and Crawford might have something to settle first. Then Ennis could be at or near the head of the line with guys like Keith Thurman or Virgil Ortiz and a few other guys. If I had my choice, I'd love to see, maybe I've said this before and maybe you said the same thing, I'd love to see Ennis fight Thurman next. A victory over Thurman would be a significant feather in Ennis's cap. And if Thurman could win, his stock would rise. He'd sort of be back where he was before. So they would both have a lot to gain in that fight. And I think that it would really resonate with boxing fans.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great fight. I'd love to see that next too. I also love to see Boots and Eimantas Stanionis if he's able to land one of the bigger names in the division. I think that's a really, really good fight as well. Also on this card in the TV opener, Kevin Gonzalez made a successful U.S. debut, winning a unanimous decision against the tough Emmanuel Rivera over 10 rounds. That was super bantamweight action. One other note, Mike and I are both 19-6-1 in the prediction league, and it looks like the standings won't change this week. It's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. Now, as we discussed, unbeaten, two-time super middleweight champion David Benavidez takes on David Lemieux Saturday night on PBC on Showtime. David is just 25 years old. He's still establishing his legacy. So with that in mind, this week we're listing our 5 greatest super middleweights of all time. As usual, we'll go in ascending order. So Mike, let's kick it off.
Okay, real quick, I wanted to preface this by saying it was kind of hard. There was 10 guys I think you can argue that belong on the list, but here goes. These are my 5. Number 5 for me is Canelo Alvarez. Listen, I thought about putting Carl Froch, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, Steve Collins, and a couple of other guys at number 5. I think a case could be made for all, or at least most of these guys. I decided to go with Canelo because I believe he did enough in the fights he's had at super middleweight to warrant his inclusion on the list. He's 6-0 at the weight, if you count his 164.5-pound fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And in a span of 4 of those fights, he collected all 4 major belts to become undisputed super middleweight champion. I don't think that much of titles, but, undisputed is obviously something significant. And all 3 of his key victories over Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, and Caleb Plant, they were decisive victories. In the end, there wasn't much doubt. So he's just the man at 168 for his era. So I think he belongs here.
Yeah, I like the Canelo pick there just because it's not on my list, so I like something different. My number 5 is James Lights Out Toney. Now I know he's probably higher on a lot of other lists, but after really looking at his resume at 168 and at 168 alone, I just couldn't put him over the other people. He does have a great win against Iran Barkley. He has a pretty good win against Prince Charles Williams as well, but just not enough top guys at 168 pounds for me to place him above, but certainly enough for me to put him in the top 5.
Well, I agree because he's also a little bit higher on my list, so I'll talk about him in a few minutes.
All right, let's roll on to number 4. I'll kick this one off. My number 4 is the Cobra, Carl Froch, who, initially I had him at number 5, and then I looked at the resumes and I thought, oh my goodness, Carl Froch has one of the better resumes at 168. Now he may not be as skilled as a James Toney, but he was pretty damn powerful. He was pretty skilled. I think his skill was underrated. Good jab, good body puncher, good timing, good ring IQ. He was certainly determined, was powerful, and he had the gift of gab. But beyond that, you look at the guys that Froch beat. I mean, the Cobra knocked out George Groves twice, beat Jean Pascal when Jean Pascal was in his prime at 168, knocked out Jermaine Taylor, beat a prime Anthony Durrell, Mikhail Kessler, and Arthur Abraham. Those in a fight where he really showed his boxing skill. Carl Froch is just a terrific fighter.
Yeah, that's pretty convincing, actually. You make me wonder whether I made a mistake to leave him off. Also, one of my favorite fighters, so bias probably would have crept in for me too. I'm just curious, who do you think would have won? Canelo at his best at 168 and Froch at his best at 168?
Carl Froch.
Really?
Yes. I think that the Carl Froch, because he was a very, very good body puncher, he was very durable, had great stamina. In a fight like that, I think it goes down to, survival of the fittest. One flaw about Canelo over the years, and it hasn't always shown up, but I have seen it in certain fights, is that he does tend to have stamina issues. He does run into that issue a lot. I think against a durable, powerful fighter like Froch, who knew how to break a guy down. Heck, if you watch even the Ward fight, those last couple rounds, it started to get a little hairy in there for Ward. I think he'd be a serious handful for Canelo Alvarez, who's feasted on a lot of boxers, over the course of the past, couple years or so, but hasn't really fought a determined, experienced, hard-hitting granite chin fighter like a Carl Froch.
I would have paid to see that fight. Okay.
I would have paid a premium.
Are we
Number
moving
4.
on? Number 4. Okay, so my number 4 is sticking with the British theme is Jose Calzaghe. Calzaghe is kind of polarizing based on my experience. Some think he was a great fighter. He's in the Hall of Fame, so that obviously means something. I think some people think he's a little overrated. I personally rate him very high. He was quick, athletic, polished boxer, just a really, really good all-around fighter. And I think he had a good resume. People make too much. I think people make too much of his victory over Jeff Lacey, who was only okay on his best day. But Calzaghe had 21 successful title defenses over, I think it was more than a decade as champion, which is really remarkable. If you're fighting contenders, that many contenders over that period of time, and you keep winning, it's pretty darn impressive. Yeah. He had victories over an aging Chris Eubank, Robin Reed, Sakio Bika, Mikael Kessler, and so many other names that you recognize. The main criticism I have of Calzaghe, which I've had all along, is that he stayed in the safe confines of the UK. I wish he had fought in the States before taking on well past their primes versions of Bernard Hopkins and Roy Jones Jr. But I still think a lot of Calzaghe. I think he's one of the best in that division ever.
I do as well. That's why he's my number 3. It's I'm kind of curious to see who you got beyond this. But, he's got a ridiculous amount of solid wins. Mikael Kessler, Charles Brewer, Omar Shika, which is a win I really like that during the time that he did it. To me, more important than who is when. When you beat that who, to me, is more important. The Jeff Lacey win, I, like you, thought it's a bit overrated. I picked him to beat Lacey because I was never, ever really that impressed with Jeff Lacey. Robin Reed, which I thought was a really good win. Look, Calzaghe made 20 title defense of his WBO belt, which, to be fair, WBO, for those who don't know, it wasn't considered a major belt for much of that reign, but still, an impressive achievement. Plus, he unified 3 world titles in that division. He was an excellent fighter, volume punching, stamina, hand speed, jab, quickness, ring IQ. There are some people who think he's the greatest super middleweight of all time. Not me, but he's got a strong case. Yeah.
So my number 3, you mentioned him earlier, James Toney. Toney was a boxing savant, if you will, as we saw from middleweight all the way up to heavyweight. He was special at 168. I thought if I added it up correctly, I went through every fight that he weighed between 160 and 160, above 160 and up to 168. He was 19-1-1 at the weight, with many of those fights happening early in his career against guys I've never heard of. But he did outpoint fellow Hall of Famer Mike McCallum in the second of their 3 fights to win the IBF title, and successfully defended 4 times before he moved up to 175. You mentioned that he beat Barkley. Tim Littles, Charles Williams were among the guys he beat when he held his title. I suppose some people might say he didn't have a large sample of 168-pound fights, which is kind of what you said, at the highest level, but I'm comfortable having him on my list because I just know how incredibly good this guy was.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you talk about overall fighters, then, James Toney is absolutely high up there. Probably he'd probably be higher than even number 3 on this list if you're talking about all time. I think at 168 he had some good wins, not necessarily a lot. That's kind of why I dinged him. But if you're talking about the eye test, no question he deserves to be up there, and heck, he might even deserve to be higher. Why do I feel like we've got the same top 2?
You want me to go for 2 first?
Go for it. I'm kind of curious to see who's your number 2.
Okay. My 1 and 2 for me were pretty easy. I didn't have to give it too much thought. Number 2 for me is Andre Ward. I used to describe Ward as an anaconda. He would wrap himself around his opponents, neutralize anything they tried to do, and then devour them, either by, a wide decision or a knockout. He was just a absolutely brilliant boxer, which is why he never lost a fight, even though he faced a who's who of top contenders. He was an Olympic gold medalist, so he had a name coming into the pros, but I'm sure obviously you'll remember that he sort of burst onto the pro scene in the Super 6 World Boxing Classic, in which as a young fighter, I think he's like 24, he beat in succession Mikael Kessler, Alan Green, Arthur Abraham, And Carl Froch, actually, you need to throw Sakio Beek in there. That wasn't part of the tournament to win the tournament. And that surprised a lot of people. He was not favored. I think Abraham was favored to win the tournament. But he beat Froch in the final, which was really something. And he went on to stop Chad Dawson and outpoint Edwin Rosario before moving up to 175. So he was just the definition of a dominating fighter. He was just dominating some 168 pounder.
Yeah, he absolutely was. I mean, you mentioned, I remember when he came out the Olympics, actually, early on in his career, he fought a lot like Roy Jones. They were very similar. And then I remember Ward being hurt in one fight, being dropped in another fight. Then he sort of went off TV for a while. And I didn't see him again until the Super 6. And I was blown away by the fighter I saw, the guy who beat Mikel Kessler in that first round match. That I was like, who is this guy? And, the hits just kept on coming. Obviously, we know what he did at 175 to close out his career, but Carl Froch, Kessler, Chad Dawson, Arthur Abraham, Edison Miranda, you mentioned Sakio Bika as well. Those are really, really great wins. I think Ward has a pretty good case for number one as well.
Yeah, I think so. He was really a special fighter. And what you said is true. I think he sort of became a technical fighter. I mean, I'll just be completely honest. All of his fights weren't necessarily that much fun to watch because, again, it was real technical, but he was so good technically that his opponents had no chance. So it was interesting to watch, but it wasn't necessarily thrilling like it was when Roy Jones Jr. fought.
Yeah. And also I might mention his ring IQ was also off the charts.
Off the charts. Yeah, absolutely.
So
you got on top.
I mean, obviously both our number ones, Ward number 2 and number 1, Roy Jones Jr. I think he has the best win of anyone on this list here by a pretty good margin, James Toney. And he didn't just beat James Toney. He obliterated James Toney 12 rounds to nothing. It was a whitewash. But his record at 168 goes beyond that. You look at Sugar Boy Malinga, Tulani Malinga from South Africa. That's a pretty damn good win as well. This is a guy who holds a win over Nigel Benn, who beat Robin Reed, which is one of Calzaghe's better wins. He lost a close, debatable decision to Chris Eubank in the UK. And Jones stops this guy in 6 one-sided rounds. Tony Thornton went the distance with James Toney. Jones got him out of there, in 3. There's the 11th round stoppage of future, world champion in Eric Luca. So Roy Jones, easily my number 1. Look, he's number 1 looking at the resume, and he's number 1 on the eyeball test either. However you want to put it, Roy Jones is number 1.
Right. Yeah. I guess maybe you can argue that Ward and Calzaghe had similar resumes. I don't know. But when you throw in the eye test on top of everything else, I think Jones kind of just blows him away. So if I counted correctly, I think he had 12 fights between 160 and above 160 and no more than 168. And that was between 1992 and 1996, by the way. He might have been at his peak during that period. I don't know. I'd have to think more about that. But he won them all, 12 fights, 10 by knockout. You mentioned Sugar Boy Malinga. Actually, he became the first to stop that guy. He's a tough guy. Yeah, to start the run. He stopped Thomas Tate to win the IBF title. Followed that with his defining win at 168, which you mentioned, the clear decision over James Toney. And then scored knockouts in its next 5 defenses before moving up to 175. So the speed, the power, the ring generalship, the pizzazz was all there. He was basically untouchable at that weight.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's at that weight that he established himself as the best fighter in the world, pound for pound, a title he held pretty much for the next, 10 years.
It was such a joy. I hate the fact that these guys get old.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredible to think that there's a generation that didn't get to see Roy Jones Jr. in his prime. You just got YouTube videos. You have no idea what you missed, guys. You have no idea. There was nothing like this guy. And that's going to do it for this week's show. We want to thank David Morrell, of course, for joining us. We want to thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget Saturday night, PBC on Showtime returns with another triple header. In the main event, David Benavidez against David Lemieux. You don't want to miss that. And you don't want to miss our next episode next week right here on the PBC Podcast.